and welcome to the BPD Bunch Brunch, where we get together with our favorite brunchy beverages to catch up, play games, and talk about all things BPD. I'm your host, Xannie, and today I am here with Katja, Melanie, and we've brought back our special guest from the music episode, Blake. So where in the world is everyone coming from, and what's your brunchy beverage for today?
I'm joining from the West Midlands in the UK, and I have got orange juice in a very textured cup.
I'm in Toronto, Canada, and I have one of my favorite mugs, and I'm drinking black coffee.
I am coming from central New York, and my brunchy beverage is a nice peppermint tea with some honey in it.
I don't know why that sounded fancy, but I'm like, ooh. Maybe it's just the way you said it. It's the delivery.
It could be. I like to be very proper with my teas.
I'm coming from Albuquerque, New Mexico in the US, and I've got coffee in my pinkie pie mug. I am very excited for today's brunch because we did another art exercise. Woohoo! If you're listening to this on one of our audio-only platforms, I highly recommend going to check out this episode either on Spotify or on YouTube so that you can get the full visual effect. For today's art exercise, our Instagram followers voted on 3 topics, and the winning vote was fragmented identity. So create an artwork that represents the struggle of having a fragmented or uncertain sense of self. So we all pre-prepared our art pieces, and we're going to share and talk about them for our brunch today. Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm not the greatest drawer, but I tried to depict basically my husband loves me dearly, and sometimes it's a joke, but I believe in my heart every joke has a little bit of truth in it, that coming out of me sometimes throughout the years, he never knew what person he was going to get that day. And so for me, there's an image coming out of a head, like out of the top of one body, but many heads are coming out. And so in this image, there's 3 heads, and I have an anger. I've on one side, the left side, there's a person who's angry. In the middle is a person who's happy with red lips. And then on the right side, there's a person who's crying. And then there's some quotes. One of the pieces of writing says, "Pieces of me are everywhere and I need it to stop." And then "My mind is running away again, come back to me. It hurts, but it's still all me. It's all me. Stop fighting with each other. You will never win this war. All part of the madness," and fragmented souls.
I really love that imagery. I think the multiple heads, I identify with that a lot. And I think it's interesting because I don't know what movie this was, but I feel like I've seen like a Hydra where in some, it's like the creature with all the different heads coming out, and they fight with each other even because they all want control, and it's like which head is the real one. And I love that image.
I forget what movie that is too, but that's such I know the image that you're talking about. And I think the fight is interesting because there's so much I've learned with all those different personalities I have. And I think that even something like an image, which it's been hard for me to even do visualization, something like this can be so profound for someone diagnosed with BPD, because you can look at it and go, that is powerful, because the quote unquote bad, it's not bad. It's all part of learning. It's all part of your growth. It's all part of the self-development. It's all part of who you are that make you this beautiful person that's resilient. So, but it's always going to fight with each other, right? Because it's fighting parts of you that you don't want to change and parts of you that you still beat yourself up with, if that makes sense.
I think what I started to realize in kind of my own exploration is that there's no bad emotion, and there's no specifically defined like one bad personality trait, because in the end, it's depending on what you're content with in yourself. Us expressing anger or us expressing sadness, us expressing intense emotions is not inherently bad. That is us being human, and we're allowed to express those emotions, and we are allowed to feel things more intensely than others. I think society deems intense emotions as bad because it's kind of about this control aspect, right? And labeling people into specific boxes.
Who wants to do their art next?
I can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so mine is very wordy. It kind of looks like a neck right here with a kind of circle for a face with some hair on the edges. The circle has in the center the word Blake ? And it's written in bubbles, and there's a lot of words in the bubble letters, and questions like, what do I hate? What do I stand for? Who am I? What do I like? What are my values? What do I act like? What is my sexuality? What do I look like to others? All these kind of like questions that I consistently just ask myself in trying to figure out my identity. And in the circle, there's also a bunch of fragmented sections, some that are filled in, a lot that are empty, which speaks to the parts that I haven't figured out yet and the parts that I feel are truly fragmented and confused and unsure about. But there are some, like the one that says trans in trans pride colors, there's queer ? Video games, activist, and then on the neck there's an open slot that kind of looks like a square, and there's a little piece on the outer section that has a necktie in it, and that is relating to how all these pieces come and go and change, and how my identity is constantly shifting, kind of like a puzzle that is starting to be created. And so, yeah.
I'm smiling because mine is very similar in a certain way, and I'll show it later. But yeah, I like the sort of the pieces.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to think of something symbolic because I'm not a great artist either, but I do like symbolism in my art, and I do like trying to have a story in a way behind my art, so that way it's not this meaningless or simple piece that doesn't have a lot of a story behind it, because I hate looking at art in museums and not understanding the full story behind it.
Katja.
Oh no, you want to see my art?
Yeah.
Yes!
We all know how well this went last time. So yeah, I will hold mine up so that you can see it, and then I will
It
talk you
looks
through
great.
it.
Oh, that's
What are you talking
adorable!
about?
Oh, thank
Great. I'll tell you, I tried to do stick figures, and mine looked so bad that I went with a different concept. So,
Okay,
figures
so
actually
I
take
will
skill.
just.
Book, not sandwich. Love.
Another sandwich is incredible.
So your writing is so legible. Like, it's very clear.
Okay, so in terms of what I've got on this piece of paper then, so I've split it in half. So the left hand side has got before on it, and then there is a picture of a trophy, a book, not a sandwich, and star student. So the before pictures, when I was thinking about identity, I thought back to when my biggest problems had been with identity, and I could trace it back to a very specific point in time. So in the middle of the page, there is a line separating before and after, and it says accident. So before, the pictures represent the fact that academically I was a very high achiever. very conscientious, and I really kind of defined my identity on my academic ability. This bit in the middle, the accident, fairly obviously represents an accident. So when I was 17, I was involved in an accident that left me unable to walk for several months. And what happened was, in that time, I had to learn to walk again. So I couldn't attend school. And that was back in the days when we didn't have online learning. If you were off school, you were just off school. That was it. There was nothing for you. So what then happened was, moving into the after section, you can see that there's a question mark, there's a picture of some hobbies, there's a heart with a cross through it, and a picture of 2 people at the bottom. So after I had that accident, it took me about 5 months to recover, and I returned to school. And bearing in mind how much value and how much worth I placed in myself on my academic ability, having missed all that time at school, I went back and I really, really struggled. So I was no longer top of the class. All my friends had moved on. They were making plans for their future and going to university. I failed all my exams. I didn't do very well at all. So you can see the picture down here, because I'd missed so much school. Then I've got a friend who is smiling with her exam results, and me, who is obviously extremely sad with mine. To put this in perspective, if there's anyone in the UK that's listening to this and ever studied something called general studies, that's like the pub quiz of UK education, where you just get asked completely random questions, and most people do really well at it because it is just literally a bunch of random questions. I managed to be the only person in my year that failed general studies, so that just goes to show how bad it was. You can see that I've got a heart with a cross through it. So after I had my accident, it really impacted on my relationship at the time. And that was one of the things that really got me through that time. And I put a lot of my identity into the relationship and the person that I was with at the time. So I'd also lost that as my safety net. Hobbies completely changed. I was physically unable to do very much. So again, that's another part of my identity that was missing. And also, it was just a general sense overall of me just not knowing who I was, because the thing that I placed all of my identity in, which was my school ability and doing well, had just gone completely. And that was actually the catalyst for things going really, really wrong a little bit further down the line when I went to university. And for me, I did this drawing really to represent that point in time when things with identity really did become very fragmented. And I don't feel at the moment that lack of identity or problems with identity are a huge problem for me anymore. But definitely at the age of 17 or 18, this is a very specific point in time for me that is quite difficult to revisit, because that sense of identity was just completely lost, and it distorted my self-image, the way that I viewed myself, my own ability, and it was just a really difficult point in time. So I think for some people, although they've had problems with identity throughout their whole life, for me, I can trace it back to a time point really when things just went very, very wrong.
It was really beautiful to see the before and the after, and then that straight line was like so powerful and like very hitting. If you were to draw a picture today, what imagery would that look like? Is what I'm wondering.
Oh, I have preempted this.
Yes. Oh,
so it's
yes.
not actually a picture.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, so what I am holding up at the moment is actually, it's kind of like a set of principles. So it's called A Good Life, and it is by Ward and Gannon from 2006. So it's quite academic, but when I was working in offender rehabilitation, this is one of the things that we used with offenders when they were due to be released. And it's all about the idea of a good life and what it takes to build a good life. So there's quite a lot that's on here, but I'll just pick a couple of examples. So for me, things like excellence in work, creativity, knowledge, spirituality. So these are the things that I have gone back to and really tried to work on that have helped me to build that identity and to give me a better sense of myself. Obviously, there will be missed opportunities. You know, maybe if I hadn't have had that accident, I would have gone to Oxford or Cambridge and been the barrister that I always wanted to be instead of a teacher. But actually, thinking about it, excellence in work, I'm super happy as a teacher now, and I can't imagine doing anything else. So it's been a conscious effort to work on all of these different areas, and that collaboratively has led to me building that sense of identity and actually being in a much better place now. It is probably worth me pointing out that A Good Life model by Wood and Gannon, so that is actually a model that's used in rehabilitation of sexual offenders primarily. Obviously, I am not a sexual offender, but it was a model that I came across in my previous employment. And I actually thought that it was quite a useful way of approaching building a meaningful life. So I do use that as a little bit of a reference point on things that I want to develop in terms of my identity, which has been quite effective. But I do just want to make that completely clear that I haven't picked that up anywhere other than in the course of my previous employment.
Mine is very colorful because I have a box of crayons and my goal was to use as many crayons as possible. So it looks like magical, but it's really a lot of doodles, which is this. So it's kind of hard to see. So I basically started with like the outline sort of a face, and then I drew these like zigzagged lines going out from like the center of the face to the edges of the page. And then I went around, and in each triangular section, I just drew on some kind of theme. And I didn't think too much about it. I kind of just let my instinct go. So there are actually some sections that I can't explain what they represent. There's something from my subconscious still. But one section is pink, and it has a bunch of swirlies and hearts. And that just kind of represents me being an emotionally sensitive person. And then next, if I'm going counterclockwise, there's a section that has a spool of thread and a needle, and that represents sewing. The next section has a checkerboard pattern and then a bunch of calculus symbols to sort of illustrate like my logical math brain. And then there's some random watery squiggles. I think this could represent a lot. This is one of those where I'm like, I like to swim. I like the water. I also cry a lot, so this could be any of those things. Then there's a green section, has a bunch of leaves. Again, could represent a bunch of different things. I do like to garden. And then there's another section that is just yellow. It's basically just yellow, that's it. And then after that, there's sunshine. I do love the sunshine. Then there's an orange section that has musical notes and music symbols, and a red section that's kind of just like, it's just red. There's not a lot. And then a bunch of gray and brown stars after that. So, and I think to me, what this sort of, as a whole, each section is sort of partitioned off from the others. So it's like every section is like its own little pie. And the way that I used to be before I started being in my recovery, it was like I am like one of these people, that I'm about this or I'm about that. And sometimes I would even take on other people's likes and interests. And so I think if I were to redraw this how I feel I am now, it would be very similar, except that instead of these like fractured pieces, it would be more mixed together and like blended together, because it's not like at least all the things on this page, it's not like I'm not about any of these things anymore. I just don't make any of those things all that I'm about.
It's very pretty.
Crayons do a lot. I tried doing it with just pen or pencil, and it just looked like it was a disaster area. But this is what I meant when I was like, it's similar to Blake's, because it's got the sort of the fractured sections drawn out, and there's the face in the middle. So
yeah, the mindset is very refreshing, and I like the way that you described, if you would redo it, you would kind of blend it all, because you don't have to have like one key interest and have everything else like not matter, you know, that we're all allowed to be like a person full of many different aspects in our life that kind of blend together into and integrate as well.
I think what it really comes down to is that fragmented identity is not necessarily a bad thing all of the time. Like, when I think back to when I was younger and I was starting that process of finding who I was after I sort of had that big come down really from my sense of identity being completely destroyed. Like, I think we talk a lot about lack of identity as being a bad thing, but actually once you reach that starting point and you start to build on it, it can be like super fun. Like, I know sometimes in the past I have been guilty of taking on partners or friends, hobbies and interests, but actually, you know, I've done things with my husband, like he's convinced me to go paragliding, which I never would have done before, and whilst I would never classify it as a hobby because I have zero intention of doing it ever again, it has been really useful in helping me to work out what I do and what I don't like. And I think that's the beauty sometimes with BPD and having that fragmented identity, because it then gives you that opportunity to go off and explore what you do like and what is going to be a part of your identity.
Yeah, I think the best part is that in a way you're more intentional. That's one of the beautiful things about BPD and mental health struggles in general, for at least for myself, has been that like a lot of things that I think people just do and they don't know that they do it or understand why, like I've had to intentionally sort of create myself, but that means that I can be more intentional. I'm like, I know sort of why I have these different parts and which parts I chose to keep and which parts I chose to be like, you know what, thanks for your service, you know, you're done. Honestly, I wouldn't trade that. It's like my eyes have been opened. You know, I can think about things in a way that I don't know that I would if I wasn't forced to do it. You know, not that anyone really forced me to, but in order to get better, I had to do it, right? And it was only because I needed to overcome the pain that I had to come up with a way to deal with it. But now I'm so grateful for that journey because I know myself in a way that I don't want to make assumptions about other people, but certainly more than I think I would have had I not gone through that issue.
I also think, to touch on something that Katja said, which was so ding dong, that we have this gift. Sometimes we can use that gift, use that gift where it's like the things we do enjoy. Like, I want to color my hair. I want to go paragliding. I want to go skydiving. We will do a lot of things, but then we just know right away, for myself, I don't enjoy it. Like, I just don't. And so throughout the years, because my list of not liking things is a little bit longer than liking things, I'm starting to kind of just take them away right away. Don't really like that person. Don't really like that. So I've tried to look at it lately as a gift versus that's something I just know right away from my chest, or if it's an energy thing.
Yeah, I mean, I tried so many more things than I would have otherwise. There's some, it's funny because we talk about sometimes how, mirroring other people's identities is a problem. And there is validity to that. I'm not saying that there isn't. It's just, I think most things are not all or nothing. For all of the mirroring that I've done, I tried a lot of things that I wouldn't have been motivated to try otherwise. And I didn't like all of it, but some of it I did. And I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. And I think there's a beauty in it, too, in that not only do you have the power to decide, what you're and who you're surrounding yourself with, but it also gives a unique life perspective as well. One of my many parts of my fragmented identity is that I have so much love to give. And I think without this fragmented identity, I wouldn't have been able to express it in all the new ways that I have been because of this identity.
Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you got a nugget of fun and wisdom to take with you on your journey. If you would like to participate in this drawing exercise. Draw what fragmented identity looks like to you. You can post it online and tag us, or if you're more private, you can always put it on our Facebook group or send it to us in a DM. We just would love to see your work. So thank you again so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you do not miss a single episode, and we will see you next time.